Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me today as we continue our study of the Ten Commandments. In this video, we're going to take a close look at Commandment number 4. This is also one of the longest of the Ten Commandments. Alright, God doesn't just give us a one-sentence command with this one. He elaborates on it and provides us with very specific instruction. And we'll see that as we read through it. So, if you turn your Bibles to Exodus chapter 20, and I'm going to be reading verses 8 through 11. This is the fourth commandment. It says, "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it." So, in the simplest of terms, what these verses are telling us to do is to take the day off. Okay, 1 day of rest each week, and that we are to spend time with the Lord on that day. Now, as Christians, we should be spending time with God more frequently than just 1 day out of the week. Okay, having devotions, studying His Word, praying to Him. Hopefully these are things that we're doing throughout our week, instead of just limiting those things to one specific day. Now, many will say that they don't need to set aside a certain day to spend time with God or worship Him. They'll argue that they can spend time with God on any day, or wherever they happen to be. They might say that they can listen to Christian radio, as they're driving around in their car doing errands, or they can say little silent prayers to God, in the company break room throughout the course of their workday. After all, we don't need to set aside a certain day to engage in these types of spiritual activities, right? But where does the part of this commandment where we're directed to rest come into play with this argument? See, I feel that's why this commandment is slightly longer and more specific than some of the others are. Because I think that God is really trying to emphasize here just how rest and worship blend so perfectly together. Sure, we could say a prayer and, maybe even read a Bible chapter or two in the company break room on our lunch hour. But as soon as that lunch hour is over, then we have to go back and face the chaos, the deadlines, the pounding headaches that come with most of our jobs in today's world. Doesn't sound very restful, does it? It is important to set aside that quiet time, which for us should be a time of physical rejuvenation and spiritual rejuvenation. Right, a time where we can fully focus on our Creator and all He's done for us without any worldly distractions, problems, or issues getting in the way. All right, this commandment does tell us to work, but it also tells us to rest. And unfortunately, rest or taking it easy is just not something that comes naturally for many of us. All right, many of us today literally have to force ourselves to take that time of rest that God commands and that our body requires. Now, some of us, even when we're feeling sick or when our bodies are feeling run down, we just keep pushing ourselves, working, trying to accomplish more and more, even though we know full well that that is damaging to our bodies. Karoshi is a Japanese term that refers to a person who literally dies from overwork. Now, in the 1980s, this cause of death, karoshi, was becoming more and more common in Japan. All right, a lot of high-ranking business executives, all right, young people in their prime years, were suddenly dying from fatal strokes, heart attacks, and in some cases even suicides that could all be linked back to the constant stress or the overexertion and ridiculously long hours that were part of these people's jobs. Jesus tells us in Matthew chapter 12, verse 8, "For the Son of Man is Lord, even of the Sabbath day." And as Christians, we find our Sabbath rest in Jesus Christ. All right, we can rest in the knowledge that our salvation has already been fully bought and paid for with His blood and does not rely on our own works. Jesus also tells us in Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." So let's follow God's example. God, after creating the world and everything in it in 6 days, set aside the seventh day for rest. So should we take that day out of our busy work week to rest, worship, and honor Him. Thanks for watching, and God bless.